Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for June 25th, 2020, recorded around 4:37 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, real quickly, once again, we are continuing to work on our unmanned camera system project that is going to be able to capture all the fury and raw power of tropical cyclones and hurricanes as they make landfall here along the coastline. So if you guys do want to go support this and check out what we're doing, make sure to go follow me on Twitter at Mike O'Malley1 for the latest information regarding our unmanned camera system project. Now, on to today, we continue to see a very quick demise. This is taking a look here at the sea surface temperatures, last updated as of the 23rd. Did not update yesterday, which is very interesting. But regardless, we still do have a area here of very cold anomalies here, around 2 to about 3 degrees Celsius below the long-term average here, stretching out in the Nino 3.4 region. This will continue to shift the atmosphere in towards a La Nina base state. And again, a La Nina is typically more favorable for the Atlantic to have a more active hurricane season, along with the fact that we are in this very classical, almost horseshoe shape AMO that is the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, and that really controls the sea surface temperatures out here in portions of the main development region in the subtropical Atlantic as well. As earlier this year, we were typically seeing a phase 2, which typically favors the subtropical regions. We have now shifted almost all of that energy into the phase 1, which continues to show the Atlantic main development region is continuously warming despite the latest Saharan air outbreaks, which have been particularly intense. We continue to see that. We will get some stronger trades across this region here over the next several days or so that might put a the temporary stop to some of the warming and maybe even a reduction in some of those anomalies here over the next several days or so. However, that will likely quickly rebound as we get ready to gear into July as we head in towards a more favorable base state. But you notice almost this whole entire area in the MDR is almost a half a degree to in some cases a full degree Celsius above the long-term average, and that even stretches out into portions of the southwestern Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean basins as well. Now, if we take a look here at the upper ocean heat content updated as of this morning, this is basically a measure of the warmer water at depth. This is taking a look here as you start to get into these reds, whites, and greens here, or oranges and greens rather. You're really starting to get into the higher upper ocean heat content, the more latent heat release potential in the atmosphere, and the more potential for a tropical cyclone to take advantage of that environment here, thermodynamically speaking. And again, you continue to see very strong signals here in the Caribbean for very high upper ocean heat content. Now into portions of the southwestern Atlantic, right off the Florida East Coast there, right off the Florida Keys, the Bahamas, just to the north and west of Nassau, and towards the areas impacted by Hurricane Dorian last year. We continue to see these areas really increasing in the OHC content, as well as out here in the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf Stream that runs all the way up here to just to the south and east of the Canadian Maritimes there and Newfoundland. We continue to see the upper ocean heat content stretching out in this Gulf Stream, expanding. Even out here in portions of the southern Maine development region, taking a look here at the close zoom, and we continue to see the upper ocean heat content in the very far southern Maine development regions to the south of the Cabo Verde Islands continue to warm, with these upper ocean heat contents now working their way up into the lower third of the scale, basically over here. And again, as we shift throughout the month of June, the remainder of June here, the next 5 days or so, and then as we head into July and August, we will continue to see these OHC numbers continue to increase across portions of the MDR. That, again, is going to coalesce with our reduction in the trade winds across this region over the next several weeks. We will likely see a substantial reduction in those trade winds going throughout time. And we will likely continue to see that area progressively warm as we go throughout the next several weeks or so. Now, once again, this is our roadmap here for what we're doing with our unmanned camera systems, our hurricane cameras. We are in currently phase 2 testing. We underwent another round of testing yesterday. We skipped out on testing today. We will resume testing tomorrow. Doesn't need to be everyday testing. However, we will be retesting again tomorrow, working on some of our other systems, our cooling system. We're still working on getting that integrated. But once this clears testing, which is coming closer and closer to reality, we'll be in phase 3, which is our operational phase. That's when everything will be fully ready to go in the event of a tropical cyclone making landfall. These cameras will be live, brought up along the coastlines. Eventually, this year we're staying locally. Next year, this will likely be implemented along the coastlines. And so for everyone who wants to understand what we're doing, this is our unmanned camera system. You notice the box right here, cut out with a nice little hole in there for the camera to see. It's a GoPro Hero 7 camera that we have with ratchet straps, specially designed ratchet straps to hold up to about 5,000 pounds before they break. So more than enough in the ratchet straps there. We do believe we have 4 of these, so we can double down one of these camera systems if needed. But again, if you guys do want to go check out what we're doing, including an all up-and-coming new exclusive documentary, including and with our unmanned camera systems, make sure to go follow me here on YouTube, first of all, and on Twitter at MikeRomali1 for the latest information on how we're designing our up-and-coming camera systems and for that documentary coming this weekend. Now, taking a look here at the actual sea surface temperatures, coming off the CDOS methodology, this is just a different way of measuring the actual sea surface temperatures. This is from tropicaltidbits.com. Valid as of 7 o'clock this morning, or that's when it was initialized. That's at 7 a.m. this morning at 12Z Zulu time. You continue to notice our 26.5 degrees Celsius isotherm here continues to slither its way further and further to the north and west with time. That's now impacting portions of the southern Maine development region. We'll continue to see that warming. Now, we have seen a slight reduction in the thermodynamic environment out here across portions of the northern Maine development region, the extreme northern MDR. That's because of this big Saharan air outbreak that has rolled off. These Saharan air outbreaks are typical for this time of the year, and it's not going to be a dead season just because you see one big Saharan air push. These tend to inhibit significant hurricane development while these things are ongoing. However, there is signs that this will likely begin to abate within the next couple of days or so and allow significant or allow some warming to continue across the MDR as we get still these stronger trade winds, but those will be reducing as we go on throughout the months and as we gear up to head towards the rest of the peak of the hurricane season. You also notice out here, in portions of the western Atlantic, water temperature is very warm, about 28 to 29 Celsius along a whole. You notice there's the Gulf Stream pouring up right through there. So very warm for this time of the year. We have a very above average Maine development region, which has cooled off slightly, but not significantly, as we've seen it in 2013. Remember that the 2013 Atlantic hurricane season was a complete dud, basically. This year looks to be a lot different. It's not going to be 2005, but it does look to be a very busy hurricane season. And for a reminder, coming up here on July 1st is our next seasonal prediction for the Atlantic hurricane season. So we certainly will be updating our numbers and bringing those to you guys as on July the 1st. Now, taking a look here, this is coming off of the tropical website here. Again, this is just taking a look at the GOES-16 satellite. This is just taking a look at the representative air mass here. Again, right now, these whitest colors, they represent the more moisture in the atmosphere. This is all the Saharan air that's been pushing off of Africa over the last several days or so. There's been another significant sow outbreak that is now pushing throughout portions of the Maine development region, gearing up, ready to impact portions of the Lesser Antilles, the Windwards and Lesser in the Windwards, the Lesser Antilles, Barbados, certainly some of the islands down here, portions of South Central or North Central America down there. And again, out here, there is another push of Saharan air. It's very faint to see, but there is another Saharan air event out here, part of the first event that is now over portions of the Gulf Coast states. It's going to bring some spectacular sunsets to those regions. However, if you do have that, this is a respiratory problem. If you do have respiratory problems, they can cause a problem and exaggerate breathing, basically. So wear masks as you should be for the situation going on right now. However, we do see this area of convective activity down here in portions just to the south and east of Texas. Really no deep concern for that area due to the fact that there is some pretty strong wind shear that's diving down across this area, really inhibiting significant development of any systems out there. A couple of strong tropical waves down here south of the intertropical convergence zone and south of this big Saharan air outbreak out here. One or two of these waves might have a very small sliver of a window of opportunity as we gear into July. One or two of these systems might try to progress and develop into something. We'll get to that here in just a minute. And this is representative here of the mid-level water vapor satellite. Basically, what you're taking a look here, these oranges and reds, this is basically the drier air in the atmosphere. And once you start getting into these kind of cooler colors, basically these grays, blues, reds, etc., that's when you're starting to get into the more moisture in the atmosphere. You notice these strong tropical waves out here coming off of Africa, representative of that expansive African easterly jet that's been very strong for this time of the year. That's also responsible for a large portion of the Saharan air events. Notice out here this big plume of Saharan air that's all the way out there, this just big dusty dry air mass that's out here. Another big area out here across portions of the Caribbean and the Gulf Coast states. Again, there is some more mid-level moisture across portions of the southeastern United States, but again, the Saharan air is going to be intruding in this area over the next several days or so, combined with yet another Saharan air event that's going to be pushing off towards the west and southwest here over the next several days or so. Again, just providing an overall dusty, hazy environment for portions of the Caribbeans and Lesser Antilles and the Windward Islands here over the next several days or so. We can also take a look at this here on the visible satellite. This is coming from the College of DuPage website, the COD Meteorology website. Again, you do notice how all of this dry, dusty Saharan air, there's another event that's coming into portions of the Lesser Antilles currently. You also notice that this big plume of Saharan air is out here across portions of the Gulf Coast states. And that's going to be really continuing as we go on throughout the next several days or so, and really not allowing much in the way of development across this area throughout the next several days. But you do notice these very strong tropical waves that are coming off of Africa. This has my attention for several reasons. A, because the modeling is now starting to pick up on some brief windows of opportunity for development out here in the main development region, closing out June and heading into July. And two, because this is representative of a very strong African easterly jet that's been sitting over Africa basically. And with the way the hurricane season progresses, these African easterly jets, they tend to favor more moisture and convection as we go on throughout the remainder of the season. This will promote these stronger tropical waves that come off of Africa and take advantage of the warmer than average water temperatures out here in the MDR. And as this intertropical convergence zone continues to lift off towards the north here, that's going to continue to favor these tropical waves coming off at a higher and higher latitude, basically setting the seedlings for these stronger tropical waves to come off during the peak of the season. And we could see some very early Cape Verde hurricane season activity, and that's certainly been picking up in the model. So this has my attention over the next several days or so. Nothing currently highlighted by the National Hurricane Center, but certainly something of interest as we go on to close out June and head into the month of July. In the Eastern Pacific Basin, we do have a tropical depression out here. Tropical Depression 3E, which is expected to become a tropical storm here over the next 12 to 24 hours, but no significant concerns to land. Another just wide area here, basically just a monsoonal air mass across portions of the Eastern Pacific with its intertropical convergence zone. It's basically the same for the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic Basin. They have the ITCZ zones, the intertropical convergence zones. One or two of these pieces might break off to develop out here in the southeastern Pacific. No deep concerns for land impacts across portions of Cabo San Lucas resort areas, Mexico, and the Central American regions. No significant threats to land as this high pressure ridging, this big heat dome that's been setting up across portions of the Midwestern states will continue and to favor persistent ridging across this area, persistent high pressure ridging, which will favor these storms to basically turn out to sea and be of no significant threat to Mexico, the Cabo San Lucas resort areas, or Central America. Heavy rainfall is still potential with this big monsoonal area, but overall, not really seeing any significant land impact signs here over the next several days or so. This is the outlook for Tropical Depression 3E, the 120-hour forecast with the cone. Basically here by the next 120 hours at the hour 120 mark, it is expected to be dissipated to the south of Hawaii. This is expected to become a brief tropical storm within the next 12 to 24 hours. However, it is still not done so. This is the forecast advisory from this morning. Again, because there's no watches or warnings, there's no intermittent advisories, so it's just the every 6 hour updates here. But again, basically the convection has increased some over the morning, but the convective bands are poorly organized there. And you can take a look at this, basically looking at the GOES 17 satellite off the Makita imagery here. Again, this is basically our center of circulation is right over here, but you have this big convective band off towards the east, comma head shape to it. Again, you saw this with Tropical Storm Cristobal in the Atlantic Basin, this sort of comma head structure. That's basically happening in portions of the Eastern Pacific now with Tropical Depression 3E. Again, it's very lackluster, and if you take a reason why, our system is located right here. There's a lot of dry air. You notice this big dusty air mass, not necessarily dusty, but all this dry air mass that's located throughout the Eastern Pacific Basin, compared relatively to where our other systems are with this more moisture air mass across the southeastern Pacific. But right now, our system is just really struggling in this drier air mass. There is some shear being impinged on this system, but not really anything significant. Again, this should make a run at becoming a brief tropical storm, which would get its second name only for the Eastern Pacific here. But again, that should be no significant concern to land. We are watching two other systems across the southeastern Pacific. Again, this one to the south and east of the Cabo San Lucas resort areas. And again, no significant concerns, 50-60 here over the next 48 hours, 50% over the next 5 days, a 60%. Remember yesterday this was actually an 80% over the next 5 days, so the chances have actually decreased on this system. Nevertheless, this could become a tropical depression by the weekend or by early next week as this generally heads off towards the north and west. No significant concerns to land impacts at all for either the Baja of California, the Cabo San Lucas resort areas, basically the Gulf of California. Everything like that does not suggest any significant land threats. Again, there might be some heavy rain from this monsoonal area, but no significant concern from any of these two systems. The second system here, only a 30% chance of the next 5 days in the southeastern Pacific as it generally heads off towards the north and west here. No significant concerns to land threats over the next 5 days for the Eastern Pacific Basin. To take a look here, let's take a look here at the 800, this is the 950 millibar vorticity. So this is just a little bit higher up in the atmosphere. This is roughly taking a look here at about 12,000 feet off the ground. Again, no significant areas bundling. Again, as you start to get higher up in the scale, this is the reds and whites colors. That's your more cyclonic spin with height. You're not really seeing that. Again, there's some areas out here in the southeastern Pacific that's trying to bundle, but it's a very big monsoonal area. It takes a lot of time for one of these systems to actually bundle and consolidate. This is basically the leftover remnants of that tropical storm up there that became a brief tropical cyclone over the last several days in the North Atlantic Basin that continued to head off towards the north and east there. Nothing really there considering, and again, pretty much all is quiet across portions of the Atlantic Basin as we go on throughout the next several days or so. One of the big reasons why this strong wind shear that's basically originating from the continental United States, still about 30 to 60 knots of wind shear across the Atlantic Main Development Region and the Caribbean as a whole. But this is showing signs of changing. The pattern is such that over the next several weeks, we're going to start to see a pattern flip. And it's only a matter of time before things really get going here. And taking a look at this is coming off from Dr. Michael Ventress over at, he's a PhD doctorate there over at weather, basically weather models there and everything else like that. you're continuing to see these very strong velocity potential anomalies here in the Atlantic Basin, as well as over the Africa area. This is basically an African standing wave. And what's going to happen is this big convectively coupled Kelvin wave is going to pass over from the Eastern Pacific Basin into the Atlantic. And that's going to continue to translate out into the Atlantic Basin, favoring some window of opportunity for tropical cyclone development to occur potentially in the Atlantic main development region. But after that, it's going to basically stall out and promote this big area of standing energy in the atmosphere. This is taking a look at the velocity potential. Again, these bluish and purplish colors indicate the lower anomalies, rather, suggesting more velocity potential, more potential for thunderstorms to rise and build in the atmosphere. This is your rising air in the atmosphere, and that in the kind of the yellowish and then into the red color, that is typically favoring your sinking air in the atmosphere. And again, that continues to show signs of becoming this big standing wave over Africa, and that has several implications as we go on throughout the rest of the season. If that can continue throughout the remainder of the season, especially near the peak of the season, we could see these stronger tropical waves that come off of Africa and begin to robustly develop across portions of the Atlantic main development region. And the Eastern Pacific, or not the Eastern Pacific, basically, the European forecast model, the EPS Ensemble Prediction Center, has basically come out with the forecast tracks of what could be a few short, brief-lived tropical cyclones coming off the weathernerds.org site. Basically looking at the European ensemble forecast and its ensemble the mean MSLP, the mean surface pressure guidance, and it does suggest that we could see a brief run at a tropical cyclone in the Atlantic main development region as we go on throughout the next several days or so. That's highlighted pretty well even in the GFS forecast model. And this is just taking a look at basically another EPS ensemble. It does show that we could see some tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic main development region throughout the next several days. This is going out to the next 10 days, beginning as of yesterday, June 24th at 7 o'clock in the morning. So we'll have to watch. There is the potential that we'll have to watch here over the next several days or so as we progress with time into July. This is taking a look here at the GFS forecast, the 12Z forecast model, the 850 millibar vorticity coming from tropicaltidbits.com, initialized as of 7 a.m. this morning. Again, you notice several tropical disturbances here in the Eastern Pacific Basin. No significant land concerns at this time at all to any of the resort areas, the Cabo San Lucas resort areas. Mexico, the Baja of California, the Central American coastline, no significant concerns to this area over the next several days. However, there could be some tropical disturbances out here trying to develop, but no significant land impacts. And even just to ramify that, the European forecast model continues to show, even out to the 240-hour, just these tropical waves that do come off, basically coming from Africa and interacting with this monsoonal area over here. The higher moisture in the atmosphere and tries to go on to develop something, but no land impacts at this time that can be in the foreseeable future. However, this is very interesting. This is the 12Z GFS, again, taking out the North Atlantic here, and you'll notice something. This is hour 66, only out to June 28th, and you notice that little system right there. That could be a very brief window of opportunity in the favorable environment just to the north of this stronger trade winds and the big Saharan air and the drier air mass, the more hostile conditions, for something to take advantage of the warmer than normal temperatures across that area and maybe go on to develop. Again, taking a look at the European forecast model, the European does indicate this as well to a certain extent. It's a little bit slower, but it does pique a little bit of an interest there. So there is the potential for something to monitor here over the next coming days in the Atlantic main development region. Currently, nothing from the Hurricane Center. The National Hurricane Center has not specifically come out and said anything. However, it is that time of the year that we are now going to start to have to look to these stronger tropical waves that are coming off of Africa that might be getting to more of a window of opportunity to develop. And that goes without saying. Again, this is going to be a very busy hurricane season. And if something does develop out here, that's just going to be one more sign added that this is going to be a particularly busy hurricane season. But again, no significant concerns out here in the MDR currently or in the Atlantic Basin as a whole. Nothing in the Eastern Pacific that is going to be of significant land concerns. So all is quiet in the main development region for now. However, the time is coming, I do believe, for the pattern to change, the upcoming pattern flip, and it's only a matter of time. So buckle down, folks. But again, that's all I have for you guys today. Again, our unmanned camera system project is coming together nicely and well. We will resume testing again tomorrow. Just kind of working on some last finishing touches basically to the camera system before it goes fully operational. This is designed to capture all the raw fury and power of tropical cyclones as they make landfall along the coastlines. These, strong, intense Category 5 hurricanes. If you guys do want to see footage of that, make sure to support what we're doing. This will get you the access to our cameras, and certainly this will be free for anybody to watch as we continue to develop. But again, our testing will resume tomorrow. If you guys do want to support what we're doing, make sure to go follow me here on YouTube and on Twitter at MikeRomelli1. Otherwise than that, I'm going to leave you with some time-lapse footage from yesterday's storms as they develop. Hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening, and I will see you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.